Hi, ho, hello, and welcome back to the Utajua Hujui podcast with your girl Aileen. This is me. This is my beautiful face. We're back. This episode is going to be a little bit special. We have some. Why am I saying we when it's literally like just me doing this podcast? I have a very special episode planned for you guys today. We're going to be talking about the Kapenguria 6 in honor of Madaraka Day. And we have another guest on this episode. It's not just me and Kariithi. It's me, Kariithi, and his roommate, GM. It was a lot of fun. Ignore that. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Let's get into it. Hi, and welcome back to the Utajua Hujui podcast. Now, a quick word before we get in. Your girl, Aileen, has a little bit of a potty mouth, which means she does not mind her language and she speaks the fluent French. Which is all to say that I understand that some people are a little bit uncomfortable with this language, so here's just a warning for you. If, however, you are not uncomfortable and you would like to learn about the world around you and capitalism and colonialism and just like all this fun shit with a dazzling, brilliant, and funny host, if I do say so myself, keep listening.
Hi, ho, and hello, and welcome to the Utajua Hujui podcast, brought to you by Aileen Kimuhu, who is also the bad teacher who drinks alcohol, and today she's actually drinking alcohol.
Why are you out here trying to blow up my spot? My God!
I just think my voice is sexier.
Okay, so we have another guest here today who's going to settle the score on whether or not Kariithi's voice is sexy. Please introduce yourself.
That's a fake ass. You can't take this guy and then be like, okay, yeah, Kariithi's voice is sexier. No. He's of course gonna say yours is sexy. You're a female.
How do you know? Exactly. How do you know?
If you didn't, I would say, bro, get out of my house. We are no longer roommates.
No, come on. Now.
I'm sorry. We haven't gone past that generation. I'm sorry.
Okay, so please introduce yourself. My audience has no idea who you are. They're very familiar with this man over here, but they don't know who you are. So please say hi. Tell us your vibe.
Hello, people. My name is GM. Coming to do my segment on the Utajua Hujui podcast.
Utajua Hujui.
Utajua Hujui.
Yes.
Hujui. There we go.
There we go. Okay, so
sauce and spice.
This is what I heard in his introduction. Hey, you guy, man. Hello, man.
What?
That's what I heard. That's all I heard in his. And I know he didn't even say that, but that's his voice just sounds like those guys who say "you guy, man."
That just sounds like you're saying that I sound like a very cool guy. So thank you.
Yeah, cheers, Baba.
See how he flipped it? He took it, flipped it, and reversed it. That's nice. Okay, so as you know, what kind of podcast this is? This is a drink-friendly podcast, and for the first time in maybe a year, I'm actually drinking while I record this podcast.
And imagine she only brought herself alcohol.
I'm sorry, did I not buy you chicken? Our score is settled.
A good visitor comes to someone's home and brings them something. She brought herself one bottle of alcohol.
First
and
of all,
it's not even a boot.
It's a can. It's a can. It's a can. Number one. Number two, did you ask?
Visitors bring. Anyways, have you ever gone to a visitor's home empty-handed?
See, I came with chicken for you.
But what about my roommate?
I didn't know he was coming. Did I know you were coming?
But you know I live here.
Oh my goodness. I didn't know you were going to be here. Okay. No, you have a point. I should have known you were going to be here.
Exactly.
But I still have fulfilled all my obligations, technically.
Uses our hot water.
Watch Lord of the Rings here.
Okay, he's been trying to he's been trying to force me to watch Lord of the Rings. I don't want to watch Lord of the Rings.
I'm gonna say this very simply. How can you be a lover of history? A lover of writing how many page documents? 11 page documents on certain events. And you've never watched the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Oh. And what is worse, is she shared with me a 2.5 hour retrospective. Okay, so fine. Sorry, I understated. A 3-hour retrospective on the Lord of the Rings.
It was very good.
I'm like, wow, you've actually finally watched Lord of the Rings. She's like, no. So I told her, by the way, before the June ends, she's going to join me and my family, as she is my wife and my roommate. Wife is wife.
No.
And my roommate, as we sit here and we watch all 3 Lord of the Rings.
And I said in response that I would try watching one. I've also explained to you that I have tried watching Lord of the Rings before, and my brain just does not vibe with it. Like,
I will lock the door.
You know how when you watch something and like your brain is just like, yes, like this is dopamine, it's hitting all the right places. With Lord of the Rings, I'm not getting that. Like,
that's sad. It seems that you
the greatest movie of all time.
Very sad background.
Ratchet.
But we accept you the way you are. We keep on moving. So today we're discussing the Kapenguria 6.
Yeah, today we're talking about the Kapenguria 6. So we're talking about the trial, like what happened before, what happened afterwards, the shenanigans, because it's a shit show of a trial. It's actually quite fascinating. Then at the very end, if we have some time, we'll talk about Madaraka Day. And like, Kenya is now 60 years old. Kenya is now a grandparent. And have we done the thing we set out to do when we got independence?
Okay.
That's the discussion I want to have.
We also touch on some of Ruto's conversation.
See, here's the thing.
About taxing us to death.
About taxing us and his plan to...
Yes, we can. Because
to exhuming us from the debt that we have.
Sure, yeah. That actually was part of the plan. I'm just also trying to be like very careful because I don't know where I'm going to end up. And this government seems to be quite...
And also,
careful with who they let in.
For the first time in my life, she texts me and tells me how much research she's done. I even said, okay, not gonna research. I'm just gonna sit here and go,
Just So, are you ready, kids?
Aye, aye, Captain!
I can't hear you!
Aye, aye, Captain!
Is that what you said?
SpongeBob, yeah.
You know I never watched SpongeBob. Oh, you guys leaving cricket sounds? What do you mean? There are so many Kenyans who've never watched SpongeBob.
That's actually a lie.
All I know is the song because he lives in a pineapple.
Under the sea.
And he's a sponge.
Okay, so first, Kapenguria trial. Honestly, I have seen better show trials conducted by the Soviet Union. So, Kariithi, GM, what do you guys know about this trial? What do you remember about this trial?
I remember the 6 individuals who were in the trial, and I would like to ask all Kenyans to take this second. How many of those people can you name in your head? GM, you want to try?
Yes, there was Jomo Kenyatta.
1.
There was this guy. What's his name? The one who died in Uganda.
I'm not going to give you the answer. But he did die in Uganda.
That's what is assumed. There's still a lot of speculation.
So you have 1 out of 6.
I have 2 because I'll talk about. He's called Kubai.
Did he die
You've
in
mixed
Uganda?
2. You've mixed 2. So, as the historian, let me help you out.
Aye.
Okay? There's Jomo Kenyatta.
For rolling your eyes.
There's Bildad Kaggia.
Yes.
There is Kungu Karumba. That's the one who was found in Uganda. There's Paul Ngei. There's Achieng Oneko. And there is Fred Kubai.
Yes, Fred Kubai.
The infamous Kapenguria 6. But to talk about the trial, we kind of need to talk about what was going on in Kenya in the 1950s. Because everyone knows that the Kapenguria trial was more like a show trial. Just basically the British government were trying to do something that wasn't about justice. They were trying to make a point by sending Jomo Kenyatta in particular to Kapenguria and putting him on trial.
Like the worst place on earth.
It is. Well, a lot of people have described it as such. I don't know what it looks like right now. I'm hoping it's experienced some sort of glow up, but I don't know. I'm not really going to go.
It looks the same.
I'd like to go see it though. I really would like to go see
You
it.
have not going to see it?
No.
Kapenguria?
Yeah.
No, it's far. You're pretending like it's far away.
It's fun.
It's like in West Pokot.
So by 1953, the British Empire was in steep decline. They had lost the crown jewel in their empire, which is India and Pakistan, and they were dealing with rebellions, revolutions, and demands for independence across their entire empire, from Ghana and Tanzania to Malaysia and Jamaica. And as the empire began to crumble, the British government was basically like, fuckity, fuck. How do we keep everything together? Like, how do we make sure that we still come out on top as all these people are telling us to get the fuck out of the land that we stole from them? Which is basically the internal conversation they were having. Which takes us to Kenya. By 1953, the British had held power over Kenya for like 33 years. And to lay the scene for the trial, we need to talk about several things. The first is African demands for independence, which led to the creation of the Mau Mau. and then how the European settlers responded to all of this. Which is why I'm going to insert a trigger warning here, because we're going to talk about genocide, because like the European settlers really did try and continuously advocated for the extermination of every Kikuyu in the country.
Makes sense.
Which is insane. It's insane. So first, the demand for African rule. Despite like an African forward policy where they prioritize the needs of the locals over the needs of the settlers, black rule was kind of always seen as the exception rather than the rule. Impressive. So the colonizers tried to set up the Lejko, which was about like making sure everyone got represented and their voices were part of building this
Legislative Council
country. Now, please, I know you know this because you're the one that fed me this fact. Who was the first person to represent Africans on the Lejko?
Some white Scottish guy in the 1920s.
Did you know that?
It was a white Scottish guy who sat on Lejko representing African people. I think he was like a missionary, but that doesn't help nothing. Can't even remember his name.
Neither can I.
But can you imagine in the 1920s when Lejko was it 20s?
Yeah.
When Lejko was established, Africa had no representation until like late 1930s. 1944 with
Eliud
Mathu and another guy with Ohaga. Is it Omamo or something? I think it's an Omamo, who were the first two to sit, and then now came the group we know.
So like in 1944, Eliud Mathu came and joined the Lejko. He was the first African representative, and in that same year, the Kenyan African Study Union was formed.
KASU.
2 years later, it would be renamed to the Kenya African Union, but we know it now as KANU. However, by 1952, when our story begins, the KAU had grown disillusioned. Members who had fought in World War II only to return to Kenya to be treated as subjects and not war heroes were like, fuck this. Like, we did what you asked us to do. We laid down our lives to fight Nazis. And when I come home, you still treat me like shit.
Of course.
Like, why did I do it for you then?
It's
Clearly,
like,
I should have done it for myself.
See, you've employed someone to come and do a job. See, you're still my employee.
Yeah, no, it's
I'm just saying that's what's in their head.
Yeah, that is what's in their head, right?
Yeah.
So the British government, taking a look at all this unrest, decided to crack down. Sorry, not the British government, the colonial government decided to crack down hard as the demands for independence just grew and grew and grew and further. Many like Ngei, Kaggia, and Kubai,
There we go.
who were part of the Kapenguria Six, did not believe that the British would ever give Kenya independence. They were like, these guys are fucking about, and now we're going to show them what happens when you fuck around. What happens when you fuck around, you find out. My favorite saying. So as a result, like, specifically these three members came to see violence as a legitimate tactic in the search for freedom. Meanwhile, you have Jomo Kenyatta on the other side, who's very staunchly anti-violence. He was very much like, we need to do this the right way, we need to follow their legal processes, negotiate, please let's not try to like kill anyone, which was very different from the rest of his peers.
He was also an old man.
Yeah, he was like 50 or 60 by that time, so maybe he just didn't have the energy to go crack some heads.
Actually, one of the best ways to stop a radical is to let them grow old. Nelson Mandela grew old, became welcome people. Even Rao is not what he was 10, 15 years ago in terms of the radicalness.
I mean, I'm going to have to trust you on that because my Raila only started becoming somebody I cared about like 2 years ago.
Oh, okay, wow.
For very obvious reasons. Anyway, so now by 1950, the more militant members of the KAU had found themselves in the KAU executive. Some of these members belonged to the Mau Mau, although we don't know. It's difficult to say.
Yeah.
Still, as members of the Central Committee, the British government really genuinely believed that these guys were directing every single Kikuyu to go join the Mau Mau. And now it's worth explaining what the Mau Mau are. It's like, classroom, what is the Mau Mau? Please.
I think they were a liberation force that were fighting for, at first, the land rights of the Kikuyu. So they wanted their land back. And then they sort of morphed into, this is the words of the British, a guerrilla terrorist group that sought to force their way to self-governance. Okay.
GM, what do you think? What do you know about the Mau Mau?
I think the Mau Mau were very strong and willed as
greatness.
As Kariithi says, they were a liberation force that were trying to seek, obviously, yes, getting the land back, but also getting the legitimacy in terms of a say in whatever was happening within their country, and trying to stamp their force on that by giving them and their people a seat at the table.
Exactly. So they began in 1944. Like immediately after, as the World War II was drawing to a close, a lot of Kenyans who had become squatters on their own land were looking around and were like, something about this doesn't make sense.
Yep.
Something about this is low-key fucked up and I need to fix it.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just Kikuyus. It was like a lot of squatters in the Rift Valley. So it was very, I don't want to say Pan-African, like Pan-tribal. It cut across a lot of tribal lines. And it began in 1944. Now, for our purposes, it does not matter why the Mau Mau came to exist and what they were trying to achieve, although both of you are very correct. What matters is how they recruited people and whether or not they were a recognized organization within British colonial Kenya. So people were initiated into the Mau Mau via an oath, often taken in secret. This oath bound its members to fight for our land and our freedom until death, and forbade them from assisting Europeans in any way, shape, or form. Typically, Kikuyu men had taken this oath to forge solidarity during times of internal crises or war, and it bound them, like morally bound them to achieving the ends, the goals we're trying to achieve, which meant that like you kind of had to do everything to achieve that goal, lest I think on fear of death, I think was the ultimate thing many people were trying to avoid. Now, according to Carol Elkins, mass oathing spread rapidly as African politicians kind of realized this shit is popular. People are really responding to the oaths, they're really understanding what it is we're asking of them, and they're doing what we need them to do. Now, the British government estimates that by 1951, over 90% of Kikuyus, roughly 1.5 million people, had taken this oath. And this was a bit of a problem for the British. So due to these numbers and the British government or the colonial government misunderstanding why the Mau Mau came to exist, they basically freaked the fuck out and they tried to stamp out the Mau Mau as quickly and as soon as possible. Because not only did the Mau Mau challenge the rule politically, but also symbolically. Because like you have a group of people who with mere words are telling you that the British way of governing this colonial system is wrong and it is oppressing us. And that word of mouth travels a lot faster than British law and British colonialism ever could. So it was a huge threat to what the British were trying to achieve in Kenya, specifically the settlers, what they were trying to achieve in Kenya. So in terms of the Kapenguria trial, part of the trial was also trying to convince the jury, the settlers, even the Africans, that this oath thing, it was nothing. Like, it's just words that you say. The British law is more powerful. British government is more powerful. Colonialism is more powerful. Now, this takes us to the final color that will complete this canvas. And this is the settler response to all of this. The demands for independence, the rise of the Mau Mau. And how do you think, I mean, you guys know this. How did the colonizers respond initially when people wanted independence? Do you think they were like, of course, like, come on, guys, let's kumbaya, let's come together, and we're so sorry we took your land, and we promised to give it back in one piece? Or do you think they were like, fuck you?
It was, of course, part B. But there was BA and B2.
Okay,
BA was, especially for Kenya, Zimbabwe, South Africa, the ones where they had chosen, like, we're not going to just use you for your resources. We're actually bringing ourselves to live here for the rest of our lives. We received a hard time. But there's also those ones of, F you, but let's talk in 20 years. They sort of did that to a lot of people. F you, but let's talk in 20 years. Let's discuss.
And GM?
Yeah, I believe, obviously there was a huge, we're obviously not going to give the land back, so on and so forth. But they also had to come to the realization that if that was not going to happen, then there was going to be an all-out war. And in such knowledge is when they began recruiting generals from the UK. There's one general in specific, I just forget his name, who was brought to Kenya, and he was in charge of as we call it, the genocide camps.
Yeah.
And what they used to do is that because the Kikuyus had this tradition of melting lamb fat on their body, they would be able to detect them by the smell. So what what the Mau Mau began doing is that they would smear the the lamb fat on the skins of the lamb and hang them in trees where the British soldiers would come thinking they found the Mau Mau settlers, the Mau Mau people, and then, have indefinitely walked into a trap. So from that point forward, it became an all-out war, and may the best man win, which obviously was the Mau Mau.
Yes.
It was not the Mau Mau.
Well, so I've actually read. The reason why I agree with GM at this point is because the Mau Mau exhausted the settlers to the point where they were like, "Fuck it, I don't want to do this anymore." Like the Mau Mau may not have won, but they tired them out.
Have you ever? How many Mau Mau people, or how many Kikuyu settlers and Kikuyu individuals and the Mau Mau died during that operation?
Too many, actually.
Thousands.
Yeah.
I don't think even 100 Mzungus died. Max, it was 300.
No, many of them died, especially the ones who
Very
had ranches.
few.
Especially the ones who
In the
had
middle of
ranches,
nowhere.
They would go to their houses in the middle of night.
And just...
You don't remember that story for that woman who her husband went outside to see what's going on and the Mau Mau slaughtered her whole family?
Yes, there are those
And
stories,
she-
yeah. Yes, officially. We have the internet nowadays. Officially, the number of Mau Mau and other rebels killed was approximately 11,000, okay? Including 1090 convicts hanged by the British administration. So you're thinking, so now the ones they arrested, they hang a lot of them. The statistics suggest that only 32 white settlers were killed in the 8 years of emergency.
Yes.
So the most people that the Mau Mau killed during the whole time were actually, what were those guys called? The King's Arm Rifles, the black
Oh, the Askari,
loyalists,
the Home Guard.
the Askaris, the Home Guards.
But
Those are the ones who died.
You're also forgetting, the Mau Mau were not fools.
No, they weren't.
As you've ever played this game called chess, there's the pawns, and there's the king, queen, and the bishops. So for these white settlers that were killed were mostly names in the white community, either them being settlers or so on and so forth. The Mau Maus who were killed were mostly soldiers, the guys on the ground who were doing the work of, going to do ABCD. So the 32 that were killed, it's like right now, if someone killed, a politician, the numbers would be slim, but the effect would be felt.
I agree with both of you that the effect was felt, and that the Mau Mau did do a lot to progress our shout and to hasten. Because, there's the rumor that in the negotiation for independence, Kenya was not supposed to get its independence in the 60s.
No.
We were actually isolated to get ours in the late 70s.
Like a Rhodesia.
Yes. But because of the fight from the Mau Mau and all that, they expedited the process. The way you say it, that F word, they were like, you know what?
Fuck this, I'm done.
We're done.
I'm done.
However, to say that they won is complete and utter nonsense. They left everywhere.
Yeah,
I'm just saying.
But they left us earlier than they had.
No, the Mau
planned,
Mau are heroes, and they deserve to be heroes. However, to say that they won that war is you can't.
But,
That
okay,
11,000
I think
people.
we know.
It led to villagization,
Okay,
which
true.
caused thousands. Have you read? Have any of you read British gulags?
Yes.
Like, that is horrendous. There's no
don't need
victory in that.
I don't need to read it. Like, my family was moved because of those villagization programs. Where we are right now is not our ancestral land. That was taken from us.
It's almost every family in
Right?
the Kikuyu area.
But I also think like where this disagreement is coming from is that the two of you have very different ideas of what it means to win a war. Like you're talking about it in terms of the number of men that
cost.
died,
The cost.
Whereas GM is talking about it in terms of
the goal.
yes,
But even for the goal,
yeah,
there's even the questions the Mau Mau have asked themselves in the recent past of whether they actually did succeed.
I mean, especially as like the generals and people begin to die. Yeah, that's a very important question.
It's a hard question to ask. I think they did a great job, but the cost was far too great. But anyways, back to you.
Okay, so actually like this debate right here is like has really captured the level of tension that was in Kenya in like the 1950s, right? And what you end up having is like the white settler response was basically kill them all, kill them fast, kill them now. I don't care how you do it. I don't care how long it takes. Just kill every single Kikuyu you can get your hands on, please.
Bring
I
in
am begging
Operation
you.
Jock Scott.
Scott. So this takes us to the 21st of October. The reason why Mashujaa Day is on the 20th, because this was the day Kenyatta was arrested. Operation Jock Scott was supposed to gut the anti-colonial movement and reinforce Britain's hold on colonial Kenya. In one night, over 180 leaders were arrested from across the country, and British troops were deployed in Kenya for the first time. They banned African newspapers as well. Unfortunately, the British succeeded in kind of pissing everyone else off even more, because everyone was like, how dare you? Who the fuck do you think that you are coming here to take our shit?
Never make martyrs when you're trying to win.
And unfortunately, they also succeeded in driving the Mau Mau underground, because that's what happens when somebody blows up your spot. You don't stop doing what you're doing. You just take it underground.
Your operations down.
Of course, because you're not going to stop. Now, we need to focus on Kenyatta, because it's not like the other 5 were not important. It was that this trial wasn't about
about them.
It was about him.
It's just like the same it's sad to say, but in the trial against Nelson Mandela, there were so many others with him. There were Jewish people, there were Goan people, there were black people, but all of us just remember Mandela.
Yeah. So as soon as they arrested Kenyatta, the colonial government kind of realized, oh fuck, we don't have evidence. We've arrested somebody, but we have absolutely nothing to prove that they've done the wrong thing we think that they've done.
In fact, till today, nobody knows if Jomo Kenyatta was involved with the Mau Mau.
And what's fucked up is they were watching him for 2 years before this, before they arrested him. They were trying to catch him on in organizing Mau Maus, appraising them in speeches, visiting people to do oaths, and they couldn't catch him.
So either he was the absolute genius, or he was not involved.
He didn't do a thing.
Yeah.
So, but it took them about a month-ish to figure out what to charge him with. And they finally charged him with managing an unlawful society, basically sparking a rebellion.
And what was this unlawful society?
The Mau Mau, which was banned in 1950.
So he was managing the Mau Mau.
Yes, that's what they accused all of them of, but in particular was Kenyatta's charge. Now they needed to build a trial. Now, both of you have watched legal dramas like Suits, The Good Wife, Law and Order.
Two you know? Oh, okay, I was gonna be like, those are the only 2 you know.
Imagine
Lincoln Lawyer.
I don't watch those.
Lincoln Lawyer sucks.
It is incredible.
Okay.
You suck.
Okay. So, both of you have watched legal dramas, yeah?
Absolutely.
So,
How to Get Away with Murder.
How to Get Away was fantastic. So, what do you need what can you do when you're going to trial to stack the odds in your favor?
You have to ask me that question well. Do I have morals?
No.
Bas. Okay, so I need the judge on my side.
Yes.
I need fabricated evidence.
Yes.
I need a sympathetic collection of people in that space, and I need to isolate my person from his support base.
Okay. GM?
I would say the same.
So you need a judge. You need the evidence. You need the jury on your side.
And you need isolation.
So let's start with isolation. As with real estate, location is key. And sometimes because a particular jurisdiction has very favorable laws. With the Kapenguria 6, Kapenguria was just really, 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 truly far away.
From anything.
It was so far and therefore so underdeveloped that it didn't have any running water, no phone service, no hotels, no access to the railway line. It had nothing.
You can really tell the British read the Bible. They were like, no. One of the problems that Jesus had was what his team was close enough.
Yes, where people could rebel.
We're not gonna do that. We're gonna take you. It's like the Russians taking you to Siberia.
Yes,
your people can never find you.
Yes. In fact, Kapenguria didn't even have a courthouse. So they took a school and converted it into a courthouse. Still, despite this underdevelopment and this lack of resources, it was preferred to Nairobi simply because Kenyatta was very popular in Nairobi. He could amass his base to basically fight the British while he was in court.
I think anywhere that there were settlers, like there were Kenyan people in a big number, is a problem for the British. Because your organizers, you can organize a response from anywhere across the country as long as there's people.
Yes, and if you're far enough away, you can control the media, control the flow of information in and out. You can control how much time the defendant has with their legal team, which means you can basically compromise their defense. it gives you a lot of like higher level control over this process. I think the best way of thinking about it is to go back to your chess analogy, GM, is that like I've been told, I don't play chess, but like you need to control the center, right?
Yes, there are 4 squares
In the center of the board.
dead center of the board. If you have control of them, you're in a better position.
Yes, and I feel like that's what the British were trying to do with this. The location was those 4 squares they were trying to control. There was only one problem with them moving the trial to Kapenguria. It was blatantly illegal. Like, there were laws that said that you basically could not do this.
Did they care?
And the government had no legal right to move the trial. So here's what they did. Because, you know, the British loved to praise themselves as the kind of colonizers that loved law and order. They would never come into your country, they would never come in to take your land without a permission. They always needed some kind of treaty that you have violated or some kind of contract that you have failed to live up to in order to come in and then take all your shit. So the law we're talking about here is that like Kenyatta had technically done the crimes he was accused of in Kiambu, which meant that they could only try him in Nairobi or Kiambu, but mainly Nairobi. This is according to Section 71 of the Criminal Procedure Code. There is an exception in Section 78, which means that like you can transport this person if you can prove that the alleged offender like did the crimes in that place, right? So what they did was that they took Kenyatta, still bound up in chains. They took all 6 of them to Kapenguria. They released them and then they rearrested them.
Genius.
So that they could continue to have this trial in Kapenguria and say it has the right jurisdiction. So colonial government 1, freedom fighters 0. Now, which takes us to the judge, this racist, right-wing piece of shit. The original judge for the case took one look at the mess and said, I'm out, peace. I'm not going to do this. So the government was shopping around for a new one, and everyone blue-ticked them. Every single person was like, this is not the case I want to live and die on. Except for one guy, as a retired High Court judge by the name of Thacker.
Judge Ramsey.
Now, Thacker was perfect for what the British had planned because Thacker was a racist, right-wing piece of shit.
Did he even live in Kenya?
He did.
He did? Okay.
He did. And like, this isn't me editorializing. This isn't me like doing like my wokeist, like left-wing thingy and bringing it up. Like, no, this is every single source I have read has pointed out that Thacker was a racist, right-wing piece of shit. He was the kind of man who would confidently start a sentence with the blacks, and then you're just kind of like, oh.
And you know he was openly corrupt.
Yeah, he was.
Like the rumor is, hopefully if this has not been okay,
I'm gonna get to it. I'm gonna get to it. Now, to give like he was the kind of man who would confidently blame Kenyatta for like bringing about all this tension with anti-colonialism without realizing that it's people like him who are the problem. It's that kind of like racism has never made sense, and it's just really annoying to see that it continues to never make sense. Now, to give Thacker his dues, he was actually qualified to hear this trial. He was a high court judge in Kenya since 1938, and before that, he served as the Attorney General of Fiji in like the 1940s. He was respected, knowledgeable, and experienced. So not only did he have like the academic qualifications that the British needed, he was also racist. Like he also had that other extra little cherry on top. Now, when Thacker was invited to be both judge and jury for this trial, he said yes, except he was terribly worried about his safety. By hearing the trial, he argued, I was not only serving Queen and country, but like I'm risking my life to do so. So like, and I would absolutely hate, for fear of my safety to influence the trial in any way. And the British government then, kind of looked at him and were like, okay.
Got you. I understand what you're saying.
Fine. What do you need from us? And without a beat, Thacker was like, I need £20,000.
Yep.
For safety. Of course.
Which translates to...
No, let me tell you, this is insane. Now, it doesn't seem like that much money, right? £20,000 is like, oh, it's a lot of money, but it's like...
To bribe a judge.
Yeah. £20,000 in today's money is worth £736,000. Roughly 126 million shillings.
That's what the difference.
Yeah. He was paid 126 million shillings to make sure that the Kapenguria 6 would go to jail. Now, I bet you're wondering, why on earth would the government pay him that much money? I mean, sure, Kenyan Supreme Court justices have gotten less for elections, right? And I'm not saying the Kenya's judicial system is fundamentally flawed. Nor am I saying that presidents are installed and not elected. I am not saying that for legal purposes. What I am saying is that, you know, the more things change, the more things stay the same.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my question to both of you is, if somebody paid you 126 million shillings...
There's very little I wouldn't do.
Really? I mean, it's about $1 million.
What? That's a lot of money.
If somebody paid you 126 million...
It's a lot of money, but it's not enough.
That is a man who values himself.
You know what? Let me. Okay, number one, Thacker was a racist, nonsense, right-wing piece of shit. That I agree. But listen to this article from, and then now think, if you're already a racist piece of shit, okay? This is from the Standard. He retired in Nairobi. This is before, before the election. He retired in Nairobi on a £474 pension.
Yeah.
Which in today, and if it's £474 today and it's like 50k.
Yeah, it's a lot of money.
So yeah, that was supplemented by his law practice. Then he gets an offer, or he makes himself get an offer of what would have been now 100 million shillings. So I have like an M to retire the rest of my life with.
Yes.
I can. How many fold?
Yeah.
10,000% more.
Yeah.
Of course. And I agree with what they're doing.
Yeah. I mean,
Push me from retirement, I'm going to do it.
We're not, I think we're more criticizing him for his political beliefs and how they impacted his understanding of the law than we are him taking this bribe.
I mean, if I agree with you and my values align with you, but I can make money from you, I'm a genius.
And that's what he did. So, like, the colonial government got the money from a special fund. I think it was the period of emergency fund. That's how they got that money. But that doesn't mean that the government in London weren't aware of what was going on. They were absolutely aware of what was going on, which takes me then to evidence. Again, to reiterate, there was no evidence. It just didn't exist.
No.
But Thacker needed a plausible reason to condemn the Kapenguria Six. Without that evidence, there's no way he could rule guilty.
Yeah.
It would be too obvious, right? How do you prove that somebody is sparking a rebellion? How do you prove that somebody is managing an unlawful society? To both of you. Let me start with GM, because I feel like...
Because you feel I'm a genius.
No, you're stepping on his toes.
I'm stepping on my toes.
Yes.
So what was the question again?
How do you prove that somebody has sparked a rebellion or is managing a society? How do you prove that?
Well, it's very difficult. You'd have to find them in the act.
Yeah, you would. You would. And do you have anything to add on?
You need a witness.
So you'd have to find them in the act, and hopefully the person who's found them in the act will also be willing to act as a witness for you, right? Now, the British government didn't try that at first. They tried to handle it themselves. They spent 2 years surveilling Kenyatta and his public appearances, and in this time, Jomo never once praised the Mau Mau. He never once told people go join. He never once said, hey, these guys are cool guys. No, he always condemned them. He was very consistent about this. So the British were like, okay, so now what? So then they thought, if the Mau Mau has members of the KAU, then the Mau Mau must be the KAU. And if the KAU has members of KCA, the Kikuyu Chairman's Association, then they must all be the same thing. So all we need to prove is that Jomo is the manager of one of these things. And then he can be the manager of all of these things. But like, that's dumb. That's so dumb from a legal perspective. I don't have the words to articulate how stupid it is.
But if the system is rigged, it works.
Yeah. So I think the British government also kind of realized how stupid this was. So then they went to finding a witness. And they found a guy called Rawson Macharia. According to David Anderson in Histories of the Hanged, a week before the trial, 20 witnesses, including Macharia, were taken into protective custody. Now, Macharia was the only person who would claim to have directly seen Jomo Kenyatta directing people to take the oath. He was the only one. The only one. I cannot stress that up to you enough. But he and the other 19 other witnesses were paid roughly £10,000 altogether. So like 61 million shillings when adjusted for inflation for their false testimony. Now, according to the Secretary of State for the Colonies, Rawson Macharia himself personally received £2,070, or roughly 12.7 million shillings in today's money. He then also got the government to fully cover his studies at a British university for 2 years. He finessed this situation.
If I'm not wrong, it's the University of Exeter.
Yeah, it was! It is University of Exeter. Sorry, the reason why that's funny is because of things in my life. So now, if you read through the Hansard, which is the British Parliament's record of all the debates in Parliament, for 1952, they say that the payments that were made to Macharia and the fellow witnesses were not for false testimony, but rather they were for protection.
Security.
The Mau Mau were intimidating witnesses and anyone who believed that would help the British in this trial. This is a lie, because the colonial government were already offering protection to the witnesses. Was it good protection? No, it kind of sucked. But it was protection nevertheless.
And do you ever pay a witness? No, you protect them, but you don't pay them.
You pay to keep them...
You give them
like alive, basically.
Yeah, allowance to survive, buying groceries and whatever in their witness protection.
Like 12 million shillings for false testimony is a bit... I feel like it's not enough.
Hey, I think at that time it was enough.
I think, yeah.
I mean, how... Okay... This is a hypothetical. Let no future government or future spy agency take this out of context.
Thank you.
But like...
Because that's my future job.
How much would it take for you guys to give false testimony?
I think it depends on context.
It must
like for Rawson.
Yeah.
Rawson was I think he was not that high level. He was like a clerk who had worked with Cow. He's probably never seen 10 million shillings in his life.
I don't think so.
So you're offering to him, that's the world. It's actually a debate I've been having about desperation. Like if I told you, Aileen, you are in a bind. So I'm going to give you 20 million shillings to solve your issue. But that means whenever I call, you must answer for the rest of your life. That's sort of the same thing.
Not for 20 million shillings.
Someone like Rawson, 20 million shillings, yes!
Not for 20 million shillings.
That's what he's thinking. And
How
also...
many guys in Kenya right now pay for than 20 million shillings and you tell them
like,
come when I want.
But that's a blank check.
But now for
That's
Rawson...
dangerous.
For Rawson, he
it also
can't...
depends on the context of the person.
True.
I feel bad for Rawson because you've agreed to be a traitor. However, number one, you can't... Like, I can negotiate to a level. It is a government that is killing people in my country. I can't negotiate it forever. They'll just kill me, or they'll destroy me, or they'll take my money, or they'll do something else. And already, I am already, like, basically I'm screwed. Damned if I do, damned if I don't. So 12 million, yeah, I'll take it, put it in my pocket, that'll be good.
Okay, so now that we've established the three pillars, we have the location, which was Kapenguria, chosen because it was isolated. We have the judge, who was chosen because he was paid off, but also he would do what needed to be done. And then you have the witness, or the evidence, which they've perfectly concocted to prove that Jomo Kenyatta was guilty, which means that it's time to get into the trial itself. Okay, so let me set the scene. It's December 3rd, 1952. The setting is an old schoolhouse in the middle of the Kenyan wilderness that was converted into a makeshift courtroom. In walks Kenyatta, Kubai, Achieng, Kaggia, Ngei, and Karumba. All 6 men are bound in chains as they enter the courtroom. Above them, planes circle like eager vultures, awaiting their inevitable death. Around them, armored cars surround them like lions on a hunt, patiently stalking their prey.
Good English.
Thank you so much. When they enter the courtroom, they are greeted by a sea of pink faces. Some are dressed in suits and ties, others in gowns and wigs, while others are dressed in more casual wear, with picnic lunches. In that moment, whatever hope these 6 men and their defense team had for a fair trial just absolutely vanishes. There is no respect on those faces. There's no compassion. There is no justice. There's only anger, hatred, fear, and a mild, confident amusement at the proceedings, as if they know what exactly is going to happen at the very end of this. Yet the Kapenguria 6 do not back down. As the 6 men walk down the aisle to take their seats as defendants, they meet each of their stares head on. They will not be the first to blink. And then the trial begins. The deputy prosecutor for the government, Anthony Summerhow, made his opening statement. He begins by laying out the charges against the 6 men in general and Kenyatta in particular, specifically that of managing an unlawful society. Summerhow, Somerhoughugh, Summerhow, argues that the Mau Mau has made the business of colonization impossible. But they don't say these words because that's giving away everything.
It's telling the secret.
Yes. But he does not explain why. Every government has to deal with unrest at one point or another. That is just the very nature of government. But not every rebellious group is a threat. It's okay. The tea slightly spilled, but it'll dry.
It's okay. Sometimes you have to spill the tea. I'm a genius.
Sure. Okay. So as I was saying, every single government has to deal with a rebellious group at one point or another, especially the mighty British Empire, because, people obviously aren't going to like the shit that you're doing. But what about the Mau Mau was so threatening to the British colonial enterprise? That is the nature of the oaths, right? The imagined brutality of the oathing process and what the oaths represented in real life challenged British dominance. In particular, the oaths were a form of law that the British could not counteract. They were oral, and they therefore spread a lot faster than the British legal code.
Yeah.
And the Mau Mau oaths, more importantly, challenged colonialism, while British government or British laws justified it. So that made the oaths a widespread threat to colonialism, especially when they were spread across the most populous group in the country, the Kikuyus. The very same people who the British had taken their land.
Yeah.
So it was just a bit of a shit show. So the trial was also, as I said, designed to delegitimize the oath and reaffirm the superiority of British law. First, Summerhall brought Ross and Macharia forward to confirm that Kenyatta had been administrating the oath to the Mau Mau in Kiambu in the 1940s. He was the only one of 6 witnesses to confirm Kenyatta's involvement in the process. Now, at the very beginning of this episode, I said that the Mau Maus were banned in 1950.
Yeah.
Right? Now, this is personally where I snapped in half a little bit because of the principle of retroactivity in law. Do you guys know what that is?
Yeah. But explain it just for the people.
Oh my God. It is widely accepted in this legal field that you can't backdate a law. For example, if I were to buy alcohol today, and the Kenyan government tomorrow was to say that you can no longer buy alcohol.
At your old age.
Yeah, they cannot then hold me accountable for having bought alcohol the day before. Yeah. Because it wasn't illegal.
So you can't say that Jomo was
doing something illegal when it wasn't illegal at the time that he said he was doing it, right? And this is naturally, this broke my brain because it's like, this is so annoying. Like this is not justice. And the defense lawyers brought it up. Pritt in particular was like, Macharia was speaking about something that happened before the government banned the Mau Mau. And Thaka's response was, yes, and? So what? Thaka argued that administering the oath before the ban was proof that Kenyatta continued to administer the oath after the ban, even though they could not prove that. There was no evidence for that. I'm sorry, I'm really annoyed.
It was a flawed trial.
Just
from the jump.
This, and that's why I'm like, why are you shocked that he said that's not justice? Justice was not the goal here. The goal here was to make a statement, and it was to lock up a specific individual along with the rest. Okay. That's what the goal was.
So here's where I continue to lose my shit some more. Because according to the transcript, Pritt was like, actually, those guys, the prosecution, does have evidence, like audio recorded evidence of what Kenyatta was saying in his speeches. So if you guys are out here arguing that he was praising the Mau Mau in his speeches, and we have a audio recording of the speech, like a full recording of the speech, why not introduce that into evidence? Thaka was like, no. I don't think it counts as a document in terms of our law.
I'm so surprised.
It's not surprised. It's just annoying.
No, but I'm so surprised that the white world and Hollywood have not yet made a movie about someone like Dennis Pritt. Doesn't he tick all the boxes of who they wish they were?
True, but you need to realize that a lot of what Hollywood is right now is treating art as a business. That's why they prefer sticking with established intellectual properties. It's okay. Let me put this in simple ways.
Even in early 2000s or 90s, why didn't they make a movie on this white guy who would go to different countries and fight for the rights of the African indigenous people?
You know what? That's actually Oscar bait. Like the Oscars would love
The
that.
Oscars, they'd be like,
that.
yes, they love it when there's either
that.
a black person who sort of didn't want to kill them, or there's a white guy who worked with the black people. Who stood? I remember there was a movie. I don't remember if you know it. If you remember it,
And that's
about
why
this
he was
black guy
given
with
a
this
role,
white son.
Dennis Pritt Road, yeah.
No, Dennis Pritt is major in our history.
Yeah.
He did him. There's some other guy, and then the Kenyans were like people like Fitz D'Souza,
Agnes Kodek.
Agnes Kodek. There was like a whole bunch of them who like came and they were like, yes, this is so it's Dennis Noel Pritt. My goodness. Then he was helped by a guy called H.O. Davis, who was a Nigerian.
Who was sent by the Prime Minister of India.
No, there was another guy called Chaman Lal.
That was
who
sent.
was sent by,
okay.
who was a friend of Nehru, who was the Prime Minister of India. And then the Kenyans, you had Fitz D'Souza, Agnes Kodek, Achru Ram Rapil
I think
Kapila,
Jasper Singh as well.
and Jaswant.
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 Okay. All right.
Yes,
So
you have to want it. I'm sorry.
I didn't even hear that.
you just auto-reacted.
It's silent.
Okay. So all this is to say
You have to just want
that
it.
from the evidence standpoint, the British had nothing. They knew they had nothing.
Yep.
But Thaka kind of
That didn't stop
understood, no, I'm being paid
He
to
knew
make
the
sure this
assignment.
evidence means something. He knew the assignment. So after the prosecution rested their case after presenting all their evidence, Thaka then gave Kenyatta's defense 1 week to get their shit together. And as they rested their case, basically on the 24th of January. No, 24th of January 1953. Something really shitty happened that heightened tensions for the British colonial government. On the 24th of January 1953, the Rock family were butchered to death by their trusted servants.
That's the group you were talking about.
Was it the Rock family?
That's the white guy. It's a white family settler group that were murdered by Mau sympathizers.
Man, woman, and child. Yes, yes. All three were murdered, hacked to death in their bed. Yeah, it was not.
The war got a bit dirty.
You need to get dirty before it got clean.
It got dirty, unfortunately.
Fortunately.
I feel like
We've
that's
dealt with both bases here, so you can choose which one you want to lie in.
I'm not sure if I feel like I lack that kind of.
Like you never want to kill a kid, but if you look at all the rebellions, there's always a kid who has to die.
So this is something that I've been thinking about for a really long time, and it's because of the Russian Revolution, right? Because you know how they killed Anastasia, her sisters, and the little boy, because they were all children. And I always struggled with it because they're kids. They've done nothing wrong.
They're not guilty.
They're a byproduct of their parents.
But you think of it from the perspective of these revolutionaries who
Yes.
have already spilled so much blood. They never want that name to re-emerge. So they will do anything. They'll do all the bad now. They don't want some kid called Anastasia to just disappear, come back in 30 years and claim her throne.
It's not just that, but like for even shit like with the Mau them killing children, it's that these kids are going to grow up being brought up in an environment that says that you can own me, you can control me, you can take my resources.
So they kill it from the source.
Exactly.
So unfortunately, that's why I'm like, it's very sad that the kid got involved, but that was the level of tension at the time. People were feeling that they were being treated like nonsense.
Yeah.
They were being killed.
Their kids were being killed.
their kids were being killed,
They were
yeah.
dying of hunger.
Yeah.
They couldn't feed them. They had to pay tax
For nothing, we're just
for
existing.
existing in a world that is their own. So they get to that point where humanity sort of goes out the roof. Goes out the table.
So, as I was saying, like the Rock family were butchered by their trusted servants, right? You can find the pictures of yourself online, but like I hope you don't mind that I traumatize the both of you, because I have a picture here, and I want you guys to describe what you're looking at. Are you ready?
Okay.
So here's the picture. Let Let me turn the computer around. This is so much work.
Is that the kid?
I think this is the bed of the... Okay, why don't you describe what you're looking at here?
Okay, I'm looking at like a not decapitated, but a definitely hit person lying on a bed full of blood. The head on the pillow, the head looks completely battered in. You can't even recognize who that individual is. That's why I'm like, is it the kid? It looks like the kid.
Just given how small
especially
it is.
look at the hairstyle. I'm looking at another picture and comparing the hairstyle. I think it's the kid. Like that shows that's a brutal action done in total anger.
Yes.
Almost like what's the one that, I mean, it's the complete reverse, but the American one, Emmett Till.
Oh yeah.
Where they showcased his decapitated, like his body to the public so they could see how bad it was.
So as a response to all of this, like the Rock family massacre, the settlers getting really tired of Africans demanding independence, the colonizers responded by calling for mass murder. One settler called for putting troops in Kikuyu villages and just killing all of us, men, women, and children. According to Caroline Elkins, some settlers were even calling for genocide, just the complete eradication of our people and our culture. And remember that these are the same people who spent 9-ish years fighting against Nazis who had done a literal genocide.
Imagine, that's what the Mamo came from.
Like turning around to say, you know what, actually, they made some points, which is like really fucked up. Even some settlers were even quoted as saying as, the only good cuke is a dead cuke.
That just sounds like
Like
the white Americans.
When
they used to talk about the only good is a dead black. Like
I think the actual phrase might have been the only good nigger is a dead nigger.
I don't say that word.
I don't say it either, but I even softened it. I didn't even use the hard R because the hard R is what makes a difference. Anyway, so after this murder, the trial resumed on the 31st of January 1953.
Okay.
At this time, Kenyatta had already been called a small-scale African Hitler by the Daily Telegraph.
Wow.
Can you tell me what's wrong with that? Because
Kenyatta's killed nobody. He's killed nobody.
Then why are they
Hitler
calling
was
him
killing
Hitler?
millions.
I mean, GM, how do you feel about Kenyatta being called a Hitler?
No, it was obviously just a smear campaign to paint him in the worst light possible.
Propaganda.
To paint him in the worst light possible.
Just ignored
with
me.
the aim of getting the settlers who had the resources behind the trial
be against him.
Get him to be convicted.
Yes, indeed. Now, when the trial resumed and the defense was now given the opportunity to come in to be the one to like present their case, this is when Pritt decided like this is my time to shine. This was his time to shine. But he took a look at everything that was going on and was kind of like, yeah, we're not going to win this. So instead of us trying to win this, let us then use this as a platform
the moment,
to let everyone know exactly what we are about. So he decided to beat the colonizers at their own game. First, if the colonial government only had one witness to testify against Kenyatta, Pritt brought 10 to exonerate him and expose the colonial double standard. Naturally, these 10 witnesses that were arguing in favor of Kenyatta were dismissed by Thacker.
Of course.
But that was the point. Pritt was well aware of the unwritten rules of settler colonial life. This idea of like all Kikuyus are liars, which I'm pretty sure some people are going to be like,
what are you saying about us?
I'm not saying anything. I'm just saying.
We are not.
Again, I'm not saying that we are. I've also heard that from other people in my young age. The Kikuyus are liars and like cheats and thieves and all these bad things. So it's not a new thing, but it also sucks. But like everyone in the settler community kind of was working under the assumption that all Kikuyus are liars. Yet Thacker was comfortable accepting Masharia's testimony, but not the 10 that were trying to exonerate Kenyatta. Where is the justice in that? Then Pritt said, okay, if the government is determined to use this trial to condemn the anti-colonial movement, then why don't I use it to spotlight the fight for freedom? He would use the trial to condemn the colonial government and further expose the reality of British colonialism. Pritt concluded in his defense saying, and I quote, "Managing Mau Mau, well, where? Not why, of course, but how. In what fashion, with what assistance, in what office, with what policy, and with what documents. Never, never anything. I would submit that this is the most childishly weak case made against any man in any important trial in the history of the British Empire. End quote. But did it matter? Nope. Did it matter that Macharia, testimony did not prove Kenyatta's guilt? Nope. Did it matter that Prit bought 10 people to exonerate Kenyatta? Nope. And it certainly didn't matter that the judge was racist, the location was bullshit, like everything about this trial was just a shit show. None of it mattered. The only thing that mattered was that Kenyatta would be found guilty. And on April 8th, 1953, Thaka delivered his verdict. By then, there had been more Mau Mau strikes against loyalists and settlers, and then Lari massacre had already occurred. 400 suspected Mau Mau people were killed by the colonial government in retribution for murdering 97 people, which is overkill, in my opinion.
It's overkill. It's also probably an overestimation of the 97.
True, but anyway, we're not going to get into it. The Lari massacre at this point, by the time Thaka was giving his judgment, tensions were already so high, they were already so thick, that the colonial government needed this win. They needed Kenyatta to have been found guilty. Otherwise, the settlers were going to do a genocide. They were going to orchestrate the mass extermination of every Kikuyu in the country. But before condemning Kenyatta, because everyone knew it was coming, Thaka gave him the floor. And Kenyatta took the stand not in his own defense, but for the defense of his cause. On the stand, Kenyatta spoke of discrimination, oppression, and freedom. He denied his involvement in directing the Mau Mau, but contextualized the Mau Mau as a response to, and I quote, the injustices suffered by the African people. And if in trying to establish the rights of the African people, we have turned out to be what you say, Mau Mau, we are sorry that you have been misled in this direction. What we have done, and what we shall continue to do, is to demand the rights of the African people as human beings, that they may enjoy the facilities and privileges in the same way as other people. End quote. Thaka's response was not as kind. He focused only on Kenyatta, and he said, and I quote, "You, Jomo Kenyatta, stand convicted of managing Mau Mau and being a member of that society. You have protested that your object has always been to pursue constitutional methods on the way to self-government for the African people, and for the return of land which you say belongs to the African people. I do not believe you. It is my belief that soon after your long stay in Europe, and when you came back to this colony, you commenced to organize this Mau Mau society, the object of which was to drive out from Kenya all Europeans, and in doing so to kill them if necessary. I am satisfied that the mastermind behind this plan was yours. Your Mau Mau society has slaughtered without mercy defenseless Kikuyu men, women, and children in hundreds, and in circumstances which are revolting and better left undescribed. You let loose upon this land a flood of misery and unhappiness, affecting the daily lives of all races in it, including your own people. You put the clock back many years, and you have much to answer for, and for that you will be punished." What do you guys think? Because I have thoughts about what he just said.
Number one, what does he mean by have sadness and misery to? Was that world happy? Was it happy before him?
It was for him. He was a white guy.
Number two, yeah, kind of his goal is to drive out European settlers. I mean, you're trying to seek self-governing. These are people who've not come to shake hands and sing Kumbaya. They've come to take over you.
Yeah.
So yes, even in his sense, he is seeking that. And number two, this whole thing that I don't believe you, that you've come to seek constitutional affairs, I don't believe you. In fact, you came from the fight started before Jomo Kenyatta. People like Hari Thuku.
Yeah.
The KCA started in the 1920s. This fight was happening for a long ass time. So, but in the long run, I think it is what you call a show trial. Show trials happen all the time. Alexei Navalny in Russia, he got kind of a show trial. We've heard of situations in our neighboring country,
Uganda or Tanzania?
No, another neighboring country.
Oh, Rwanda.
I don't say their name because maybe one day I will want to work with them. And allegedly also showcasing, having show trials with Rusesabagina. So there's so many instances of people holding trials just for the public perception rather than for the seeking of justice. And Judge Thacker, all he was thinking of was the decision was made way before. And I go with Prit. In fact, with Prit, I wish I would have been even more harsh. I would have said, we all know we're here. We know we're here just to stamp a piece of paper. But before we go, please remember what we are fighting for. And you go for it. And people forget. So then this guy suffered a lot, but I'll leave it to GM.
GM, what about you? What do you think of Taka's final words to Kenyatta before condemning him?
No, I believe that was just his final stamp of, condemnation. In the essence of what he said you're even turning time, like you're taking time backwards, kind of. And if you think about it, how? Because even if he did take the time backwards, then how was the Kikuyu going to be happy with that kind of life at that point in time? So I think generally it was just in a lot of English him saying that we find you guilty with or without evidence, with or without you being guilty or not, and you're going to suffer for it.
Yeah. And suffer he did. Like Thacker sentenced the Kapenguria 6 to 7 years of hard labor and then a lifetime in living in isolation. The entire trial took 56 days. That's very quick.
Short.
Very, very quick. And as soon as the job was done, Thacker just pieced the fuck out of Kenya and went to London. With the £20,000 he was given, which by the way was enough money to buy 10 homes.
Life was good.
Life was very good for him. Now, soon after the trial, the Kapenguria 6 appealed their case, naturally. The Supreme Court of Kenya did invalidate Thacker's judgment because of the whole jurisdiction location thing, right? But then this decision was quickly reversed by the East Africa Court of Appeals.
Yeah.
And when Prit went to the Privy Council, which is a body that advises the king or queen on matters domestic and foreign, they rejected this petition as well. In 1958, there was a development though. Rossa Macharia came forward and said, guys, I lied. I would like you to notice that it happened in 1958, which is 5 years after he had done his initial lying and some years after he graduated with his degree.
Genius.
So he basically got his shit and then said, you know what, now my conscience is like feeling heavy. I'm going to go confess to the crime that I committed.
Retribution.
Oh, that's brilliant. I mean, I kind of want to be angry at him, but like.
So then, then now he confessed, and then what happened?
He basically swore an affidavit in November, walking back the testimony. He was put to trial for perjury because it is illegal to lie on the stand. And in 1959, he was found guilty and sentenced to 21 months of jail. Naturally, this had implications for the original trial, as was noted by British MPs and Parliament. A lot of them were asking, well, if this guy was recently found to have been lying, and it was his evidence that condemned the entire Kapenguria 6, then we need to go back to the original trial and retry them, because that's the only fair thing. But the government at the time was like, well, no, we don't need to do that. Like, there were other witnesses. It's fine. Don't worry about it. Still, as a result, Kenyatta's verdict was still technically upheld. No legal court had challenged it. Unfortunately, which takes us to the very end of this episode and to where our discussion needs to now go. Unfortunately, the Kapenguria trial may have failed to achieve its intended purpose. The settlers still clamored for greater violence against anti-colonial activists because nobody believed this trial. I think that was the first thing that they needed to have established, this legitimacy. And this trial was not legitimate. You can open that soda, it's fine. And just by the end of the trial, I think Kenyans had so thoroughly seen through the veil of British colonialism that we just refused to take the shit anymore. And if anything, I would argue that this trial is what cemented that feeling of anti-colonialism more than anything else. And that's the story of the trial. We are done.
Wow.
We are done. That's it.
The 6 Kapenguria.
The Kapenguria 6.
Yes, the 6 Kapenguria.
I find them so hilarious because, number one, people assume that the Kapenguria 6 were in solidarity together.
No.
Actually, they were not friends. Not all of them.
Not.
A few of them were. Like Achieng and Jomo Kenyatta were cool. A few others. Others, like Paul Ngei, I think, thought Jomo Kenyatta was too conservative.
So, in fact, two fun facts. The first is that I think Oneko was actually acquitted for really stupid tribalist reasons. In the appeals, the judges were like, well, Oneko is from the Luo tribe. He can't speak Kikuyu, so he had nothing to do with this.
Look at that.
And they let him go.
And he was Jomo Kenyatta's personal secretary.
Exactly. Which means he probably should have known more than anyone what exactly that man was up to, but they didn't think about it that way, did they?
No.
Then the second fact was that later on, a lot of there was some internal division among the 6 because they were particularly mad that Kenyatta had the resources and the clout to continue pursuing his cause. Meanwhile, they were all just like, and us?
Yeah.
Have you forgotten us?
Many of them. And then people also do you know how people tried to kill Kenyatta twice while he was in prison? In fact, a young politician by the name of Kariuki Chotara is said to have charged Kenyatta with a knife during that period.
Even that, they even used to give Kenyatta booze to drink, and the whole idea was to get him to drink as much booze as he wants, for him to get liver cirrhosis and die in Kapenguria.
So, my God!
The truth of the matter is history shows us that it was more than likely that Kenyatta was not a member of the Mau Mau. Because the radical members of the Mau Mau, the organizers, who some of them were in the Kapenguria 6, a couple of them, hated him. Rightfully so or not, it doesn't really make sense. But the truth of the matter is, it was a divided group that were put together in a way to make a statement. And in time, Operation Jock Scott, it took time, but they got everyone they wanted to get. I think they didn't get a few of them. But Dedan Kimathi, recently, literally just 2 weeks ago, Ruto said that he's going to begin the process of trying to find Dedan Kimathi's body. You know, it's never been found.
I know that. I'm
but
wondering.
by now, isn't it?
The only
but
hope.
by now, isn't it already?
The only hope you have of getting
preserved.
him. No, it was thrown into the rubbish. It was just thrown.
Yeah.
See, committee. It was just thrown into big things.
But sometimes, the universe works. I don't know enough about dead bodies to explain this, but sometimes the conditions are very well ripe to preserve a dead body.
So the hope is how he was. The one thing I do not know is this was Ruto speaking in response to the passing of Dedan Kimathi's wife. I think her name was Modoni. I can't remember her full name. So the hope you have is that maybe Dedan Kimathi had children that you can sort of, even as you find skeletons, you can compare the DNA. But imagine 60 years of independence, 60 years of Madaraka, and we have still not found the body of Dedan Kimathi.
Yes.
This is what the British did. So that's why I don't believe this trial, the Kapenguria 6 trial, had much to do with the Mau Mau. I think it was more about seeking the individuals who were placing themselves to be the leaders of the liberation and managing it. Because what did they do later? In 1960, they approached one Jaramogi Odinga, I think it was 1960, and asked him, why not develop a government with people like Ronald Gala,
with Tom Mboya,
guys like Tom Mboya? Why don't you guys make government? But everyone knew the only guy that Kenya would work under, because he was an old man. For the first one, was only Jomo Kenyatta. So, retrospectively, as you allowed us to get there, the trial was completely a facade. It was complete nonsense. However, it was largely about slowing down a train that was speeding up.
That's also true. So before I comment, GM, what do you think of the trial?
I agree with what Kariithi has said.
You were about to say.
You're about to say greatness.
I agree with what Kariithi has said.
Okay.
It was obviously yes, in terms of, because if Jomo Kenyatta had not gone to trial during that period of time, whether he was involved or was not involved, which is still very unclear, it would have just become worse.
Yeah.
You know, they would have tried doing a genocide, which would have become a big story, and so on and so forth. Yeah.
Okay, so my question to both of you then is this: like, what is the point of a show trial? Do show trials ever work? Because in Kenya,
a show trial is just to show that we are following law and order,
Procedure.
but in reality, we're just going to lock this guy up.
so is there a point? Because like, if the whole point of a show trial is this unwritten understanding that everyone knows it's fake, then why do it?
Yeah, so that on record it was done.
And also, and this you've isolated this very well in your work. You have to understand, number one, what is the purpose? Number two, who is your audience? They did not have an audience that had the word Kenyan in it, that they cared about. These Kenyans, especially these Kikuyus, they're guilty. They're all useless. They all want to kill us. We hate them.
With good reason.
That's the mind of the Mzungu. What we need is to get the British people on our side of history, to view these people not as human beings fighting for a cause that is just, but as terrorists and guerrilla leaders that are fighting for something that doesn't matter, and they're fighting it in the wrong way. So Jomo is trying his best to, and because I think he was already quite clear when he came back, it was already quite clear to him that he will be the one to lead us into this new world. He's trying his best to stay clean, to do it the Mzungu way, with the guys like Kibaki, with guys like Mishuki. There were a bunch of them that were doing it the quiet way. But if we were to delegitimize his cause, we shape him and make him a terrorist. And so, as a terrorist, the British will see anything we do to them. We know we can't kill you because you're too big, but anything we do to you is just.
Yes.
Unfortunately, because of how much was going on in the time, at the same time, the log that was blocking their eyes was already being removed, and the British people were starting to see the atrocities that they were doing and they were committing in these areas, and were already understanding. So the writing was already on the wall, no matter how much the British colonial government was trying to quell and divert their attention that way. So I don't think the British, it's all about who your audience is, and their audience was trying to wrap Kenyatta up and his people into a group of terrorists who have no cause.
So my follow-up is, have things changed?
It's something, I think you say it the most.
A revolution is a 360-degree turn to end up exactly where you started. It's
Yes.
not me, it's John Green.
So John Green, but there's also the other saying of, the more things change,
the more they stay the same.
I am one of the believers who, I'm quite strong on this, that feels that as Kenyans we have failed to see how far we've come. We've come very far. That we've had an election recently in which the establishment was openly against someone, and the establishment lost and accepted defeat.
It depends on how you define the establishment,
The establishment we know. I mean, you can have different levels, all that thing, but the establishment we know and that is open was openly against this person, and he won. We've had 3 elections with a new constitution.
Yes.
We've had 5 presidents now.
Yes.
Which, for all intents and purposes, shows progression. But I think the players have just changed. They've just morphed into a new group of individuals with who are now the political elite, who have completely suspended what is true and what is not. Do you know what is true in this country anymore?
Unfortunately, that's actually something I wanted to bring about, because I can remember how in like August, like from March last year, we started hearing the Kenyatta government pursuing corruption cases against Ruto's top guys. And then the second those guys got into power, those cases just went away.
Dropped. Yeah.
And it makes me wonder, like, did you actually have something?
Or
was this politics?
Exactly.
Or maybe it was both. Maybe you actually had something, but then it became too...
But you probably had it for a while. You just chose to use it now. And not just that immediately after you've done that and all those cases are dropped, that person who dropped all the cases then becomes the
head of NIS.
Director General of the NIS. Which, to me...
But his seat has been contested.
It has been contested,
and
but that is who you...
He's most likely not going to make it.
But that is who you appoint.
Very many bodies have gone against him.
Because it just feels...
Bodies always go against, but that's the question. So now you ask yourself, who was right?
Wait. Okay, go.
you ask yourself, who was right? Was it the DPP? Was it DCI? Was it Kinoti on his knees when he was praying? Remember that picture of him praying that? Was he praying because he was guilty, or was he praying because he knew what was coming? So I think the biggest thing we have to, that has happened in this country is we do not know what the truth is. We do not know what happened with Msando in 2017. We do not know what happened to... We do not know if Nkaiseri died of natural causes or if he was murdered. We don't know about Saitoti. We don't know about Tomboya. We don't know about GM Karaoke. We don't know about Robert Ouko. We don't know about Agwins Kadek. We don't know about Pio Gama Pinto. The names and the lines. We don't know about Rosson Macharia. We don't know about that guy who, when he was accused of killing, the one who was accused of killing Tomboya, when he walks into cell and says, why not go for the big man? We do not know who the big man is. I think as history has, our history is one of more truth. We know the truth is in there, but where is it? We don't know. We do not know.
Okay, so speaking of truth, then allow me to transition this conversation into like the president's recent comments at Madaraka Day, because we're recording the day after, so yesterday. What do you guys think?
What did he say?
I remember the one piece that stuck with me is that him saying, oh, we're going to alleviate the cost of public transport by switching to electric vehicles. And my first thought was, do you not know how much power costs?
Maybe it still costs less than petrol, though.
Maybe, I'm not sure if it does, to be honest. But like...
And they were pushing for a 60% increase.
And then you also have the finance bill and everything he's doing there. In fact, see, all three of us are tax-paying citizens, yes? Yeah, you pay taxes. You haven't, or you haven't yet?
I don't pay.
Why you?
You don't say it publicly. You go for all of us.
You don't know me.
Okay, so for legal purposes...
He's in jest.
For legal purposes, this is all a joke. We are all law-abiding, tax-paying citizens that feel very strong things about our country.
That's what they say.
Exactly, that's what I'm trying to say. And what do you guys think of the new tax bill? The doubling of the age of fuel.
The new finance bill.
No, the fuel one doesn't make any sense. I would state that it doesn't make any sense because what will then eventually happen is that it will become very impossible for people to transport themselves from point A to point B. And what will then eventually happen is that many people would even stop using the so-called matatus because they become expensive, and people would convert to walking, which has both a dark side and a light side. The light side is that if we have a very forward-thinking government, we could move electric, and things could progress that way, and we could get a tram system that could work between Kenya, Thika, and Naivasha. We could get a long rail system that would be able to transport people in and out of Nairobi to give Nairobi a bit more air, because there are too many people living inside it. At least during the day. I mean, during the day we are like 6 million people, and at night we're about 4.2 million people who actually sleep.
Correct.
In Nairobi.
You don't sound so surprised.
I'm shocked.
I mean, this is your roommate, please.
Yeah, he's rubbed up on my knowledge.
My God.
So anyway, moving forward. So that would happen. On the other side, it would make the oil people very rich. I mean, with that kind of tax system, it would make them very rich.
My thoughts are, there is a difference, and I'm someone who's trying to, who always tries to give the next government the chance, even though I was not a supporter of this government. I have said I will give them a chance, but I think there's a difference between funga mshipi and tighten your belt and dying of starvation. And I think they are trying to get the country into following the correct financial purposes, the financial policies, like the right way of doing things. They're saying government was overspending, government was living beyond its means. Let's tighten up, let's get everything in order, let's cover all the gaps and progress that way. However, they're not realizing how close a large percentage of their people, the people who had transitioned to middle class and were now starting to pay tax, and were now starting to do this, how close their line is between being middle class and going back to the poverty line. And what could happen if the price of fuel stays like this, and if now you add a housing bill, a housing tax,
5%.
which was already, that one we give them that. This was something that was planned by the Uhuru government. A housing tax. You increase NSSF. You do NHIF in a different way. And then you increase payee. Your people are not getting the services that will allow them to live their lives. So I agree with a number that we need to funga mshipi, but if my salary doesn't increase, how am I going to survive? That is the question I have.
What I noticed that the both of you haven't mentioned is this idea of like trust, right? Because we all know Kenya has a corruption problem, to put it very lightly. So even as the government is raising all these taxes, do you trust that they're going to use them in the way that they say they are?
Actually, no. I kind of a little bit do.
What? Sorry. You know what? That was judgmental.
This is the genius. You know, this is the mind of the Kikuyu. Yeah, this is the mind of the Kikuyu during the election. Before the election, they were like, "We'll vote for president, this person, because we know." Everyone said this. Every single individual in Kenya has accepted. We know this person has had a corrupt past. However, because he's at the helm, he's not going to do it. So I don't think he will be very corrupt. And one thing that I will give props to Mr. Ruto is he is scary as hell. I mean, he's hired an interior minister who everyone is like, hey, you're not scary softy at all. You're softy, you're high voice. But him and his deputy
and also
are scary.
He's also put like scary people in important ministries like energy, church.
Yeah. Ooh. These are people who, if they're like, I don't think he would be afraid of destroying someone, which was something we said Uhuru was a weakness of his, that when it got too close to him, his heart came into the issue. I think Ruto is a very different situation. So I am one who kind of believes corruption will always exist, but I kind of believe it won't go as haywire as it did in the past. Because this man is trying to he's trying to prove himself.
But have you not seen?
But it could be the other way, and
like we've already seen.
I'm being the devil's advocate, by the way.
We've seen the Kemsa scandal.
Thank you. It's come back again.
And what did he do?
I mean, he fired those people, but like they were still his people.
No, but that's the point I'm saying. He's not afraid of taking action.
Yeah, but firing them and convicting them are two different things.
Thank you.
So that's the hope. The next step is conviction. Or to him, conviction is an afterthought. Maybe he's going to destroy them in other ways. But I'm this is being devil advocate because I'm really not believing what I am saying. But I truly think that we have to give this guy an opportunity to show himself. He is someone who already knows he has an image problem. He knows that if corruption goes haywire, everyone is going to look at him because they already convicted him in their minds of corruption years ago.
See that land case where he allegedly grabbed the land of somebody during PAV. Allegedly.
Yeah.
The court was like, return it.
You see, so everyone has convicted him in his mind. And I think he knows that he has to prove against this. He has done his corruption. He's gotten his money. He's good. His pocket is full. Now he wants to show that he can govern. He wants to prove to the naysayers, the Uhuru guys and all the guys that he can govern. So I don't think he'll take, and I think he'll be much harsher on the people he will take. But remember, this is a devil's advocate opinion. Don't find me on the streets and tell me, Ati, your opinion is stupid, because it's a devil's advocate opinion. What if the guy who was convicted as the openly corrupt individual ends up being the guy who fights corruption the best?
You know, I'm going to isolate that audio and just like blast it on TikTok. Enjoy.
Please put the whole context.
Enjoy, no.
The whole context.
No. So, GM, I feel like you were busy. You were like, to something he said, and then he talked over you.
Yeah. So
I'm talking about him again.
All I'm saying is this. There's no way a thief can be stealing pennies and pounds from the people who work outside the bank. And when he gets into the bank, he decides that he's going to become the best administrator of that bank.
That's just like, yes.
Okay, you got me there.
There's no way.
But my thinking is, it's been, and this is crazy, because can you imagine? It's been 8 months. Is it 8 months? 4 plus 6.
Yeah, 8 months. Well,
it's
10.
been almost 10 months.
10 months.
Of the Ruto administration. And we have to see, from the scandals that have come up, has action been taken? A little bit. Is there more that needs to be taken? Yes. Was Uhuru all bad? Hell no. Hell no.
Of course not.
Is Ruto all bad? No.
Possibly.
No.
I mean, we just don't know the good. That's the thing. All we know of him is the bad. We don't know the good.
I think he's given a bit too much power to his thinkers.
Akirande.
Don't always give your thinkers too much power, because your thinkers will explore their theory. I don't understand. Like Mudavadi, this was a clip from the Star, so you never know if this is a clip from one of the Twitters of one of these sites. You never know if it's truly accurate. But he said that he believes that we have to think of a really hard 3 years. No politician is gonna give his group 5 years of hardness, and then we re-elect him. So at some point we'll start seeing the goodies.
No, but that's the thing. Like, isn't it just a bit? It's incredibly disingenuous to have us suffer through the first half of your administration,
and then
to then kiss us and give us and feed us nothing but poetry and like beautiful flowers in the second half.
If we think about it logically, that's the only way it's going to go.
Yeah.
Because first of all, we need to deal with this debt issue that we have. So for that, we need to tighten our belts and be ready to suffer for a good 3 to 4 years. And then after that period, when things start becoming better and we have more money in the economy, jobs have been created, so on and so forth, then we start to see the goodies that are coming in from government, where it's subsidized ABCD, so on and so forth. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's the whole thing.
Because I feel like, so the food has been brought out, which means it's time for us to end. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast. I hope you had a fun time. I had a fun time doing law and history and shit. It's been a while since I used my legal degree.
And what's next? What's the next topic?
I think it might be Oko. Like, I don't know. I'm right now, the thing that's going on in my mind is if the British, if the settlers had planned to do a genocide, you just don't say, I want to do it. At some point in the back of your mind, you're figuring out the process of doing it.
Linchpin.
Yeah, so like I'm trying, I might want to conduct that research into how they might have done it, because it's fascinating to me that there is a chance that had the wrong governor been in place, I would not exist right now. You would not exist. No one in this room would exist right now.
Oh, we'd all be white people.
We'd all be white people, which is even scarier. So that's something I want to research. I mean, I might want to do the easy thing and do OCO, IDK, but we both know I'm going to be back here in like 2 weeks.
Yeah, with more chicken.
Sure. Okay, thank you for listening. Bye. Thank you so much for listening to the Utajua Hujui podcast. I really appreciate you giving me your time of day. I know that your time is very valuable. If you'd like to connect with me, you can find me on Instagram at utajuahujui.pod. That is at utajuahujui.pod on Instagram. Please don't forget to like, share, review, do all the nice things. I could really use the boost. Okay, enjoy the rest of your time on this planet. Goodbye.